The morning mist hung low over Windsor Castle as Catherine sat in the breakfast room, stirring her tea without drinking it. The newspapers lay untouched beside her plate, their headlines screaming about royal duties and public expectations. William found her there, still in her dressing gown, staring out at the gardens where their children had played just hours before. "The weight feels different today," she said softly, not turning to look at him. Heavier somehow, William understood immediately. For months they had spoken in whispers about this possibility, these stolen conversations in corridors and quiet moments after official events. The constant scrutiny had begun eating away at their family life like water slowly eroding stone. Every smile was analyzed, every gesture photographed, every family moment dissected by strangers who felt entitled to their private world. The breaking point had come 3 days earlier. Their youngest had asked why people with cameras followed them to the park, why they couldn't simply be a normal family. The innocence in those young eyes had shattered something inside both parents. That night, after tucking their children into bed, William and Catherine had sat in their private sitting room and spoken the words that had been haunting them for years. What if we just stepped away? The idea wasn't born from anger or rebellion. It grew from exhaustion, from a deep longing to protect what remained of their family's privacy. They had given everything to their roles, traveled countless miles, shaken thousands of hands, and smiled through endless ceremonies. But somewhere in the midst of duty and service, they had begun to lose themselves. William remembered his mother's struggles with the same fishbowl existence. The memories of Diana's fight for normalcy, her desperate attempts to give her sons ordinary experiences, had shaped his understanding of what royal life could cost. He didn't want his own children to grow up feeling trapped by circumstances they never chose. Catherine had entered the royal family with hope and determination, believing she could adapt to anything for love. She had learned protocols, mastered public speaking, and thrown herself into charitable work with genuine passion. But the relentless attention had slowly worn away her natural spontaneity. She found herself calculating every word, every expression, until even private moments felt performed. The couple had explored every alternative. Could they reduce their official duties? Could they relocate to a more private residence? Could they somehow create boundaries that the media would respect? Every option seemed to lead back to the same conclusion. True privacy was impossible within the current system. Their decision wasn't made lightly or quickly. They had consulted trusted advisors, spoken with family members, and considered the implications for the monarchy itself. They understood that their choice would disappoint many people who had invested emotionally in their fairy tale romance and picture-perfect family image. But ultimately, they chose their children's well-being over public expectation. They chose genuine happiness over performed contentment. They chose to be parents first, royals second. The paperwork sat on William's desk, formal letters of resignation from official duties, requests for privacy that they hoped would be honored, and plans for a quiet transition that would minimize disruption to the institutions they had served faithfully. Catherine finally turned from the window, her eyes meeting William's across the room. In that look, they confirmed what they both knew. This wasn't an ending, but a beginning. They would face whatever came next together as they always had, but this time they would face it on their own terms. The world didn't know yet. The formal announcement was still days away, but in that quiet morning moment, surrounded by the walls that had sheltered generations of royals, William and Catherine took their first free breath in years. Soon, they would step out of the spotlight that had defined their adult lives and into an uncertain but chosen future. Their love story had captivated the world, but now they were writing a different chapter, one where love meant having the courage to walk away from everything others expected them to be in order to become who they truly were. The fairy tale was ending, but their real life was just beginning. The Kensington Palace press office had never handled anything quite like this before. Sarah, the communications secretary, read through the statement for the 100th time, her hands trembling slightly as she held the document that would change everything. The words were carefully chosen, respectful yet firm, explaining without oversharing the deeply personal reasons behind this unprecedented decision. Their Royal Highnesses have made the difficult decision to step back from their roles as senior working members of the royal family, the statement began. This choice has been made with the welfare of their children as the primary consideration and with deep respect for the institution they have served faithfully for many years. In the hours before the announcement, a select few had been informed. The Queen, despite her advanced age, had received the news with surprising grace. She had lived through enough family crises to understand that sometimes personal happiness must take precedence over duty. Her only request was that the transition be handled with dignity, protecting both the family and the institution. Charles, as heir to the throne, felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of him understood his son's desire for privacy. He himself had struggled with the constraints of royal life. But another part worried about the implications for the monarchy's future. Fewer working royals meant increased pressure on those who remained. The media response was immediate and explosive. News editors across the globe scrambled to reorganize their front pages. The story dominated every news cycle, with expert commentary streaming in from constitutional scholars, royal biographers, and public relations specialists. Social media erupted with opinions ranging from supportive to outraged. Many people felt personally betrayed, as if William and Catherine owed them their public service indefinitely. Others applauded their courage to prioritize family over tradition. The debate revealed deep divisions about the role of monarchy in modern society, and whether public figures had the right to choose privacy over obligation. Camera crews gathered outside Kensington Palace, hoping to catch a glimpse of the couple. Security was increased around all royal residences as crowds of supporters and protesters began to gather. The children were kept inside, away from the chaos their parents' decision had created. International reactions varied significantly. American media largely celebrated the choice as brave and modern. European royal families watched nervously, wondering if this would inspire similar decisions in their own courts. Commonwealth nations expressed concern about the implications for their own relationships with the British monarchy. The financial markets reacted with uncertainty. Companies that held royal warrants worried about losing their prestigious associations. Tourism officials calculated potential losses from reduced royal events and appearances. The economic impact of royal celebrity was larger than many had realized. Behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace, emergency meetings were held to discuss practical implications. Who would take over William and Catherine's patronages? How would the line of succession be affected? What precedent was being set for future generations of royals? Catherine's family faced their own media storm. The Middletons, who had once been criticized for their middle-class background, now found themselves portrayed as either the villains who stole royalty away or the heroes who offered an escape route to happiness. They maintained dignified silence, following legal advice to avoid inflaming the situation further. The couple themselves remained secluded during the initial media frenzy. They had anticipated the intense reaction, but were still shocked by its scale. Every aspect of their lives was being re-examined through this new lens. Old interviews were analyzed for hidden clues, past decisions reinterpreted as signs of their eventual departure. Public opinion polls revealed a nation divided. Younger generations largely supported their choice, viewing it as a sensible prioritization of mental health and family welfare. Older demographics were more likely to see it as an abandonment of duty and tradition. The generation gap in reactions reflected broader cultural shifts about work-life balance and personal autonomy. Letters poured into royal offices from around the world. Some expressed disappointment and anger, others offered support and understanding. Many shared personal stories of their own struggles to balance public expectations with private needs. The couple's decision had struck a nerve that went far beyond royal watching. As the first week after the announcement drew to a close, it became clear that this story would not fade quickly. The world was witnessing something unprecedented. A popular, successful royal couple voluntarily walking away from their positions at the height of their influence. Whether this would be remembered as a moment of weakness or strength remained to be seen, but it was undeniably a moment that would reshape public understanding of duty, choice, and the price of fame in the modern world. From Tokyo to Toronto, newspaper headlines blazed with news of the royal departure. In coffee shops across Manhattan, strangers debated whether William and Catherine were selfish or sensible. London taxi drivers found themselves playing therapist to passengers who needed to voice their opinions about the shocking announcement. The story had touched something universal about modern life, the struggle between obligation and personal happiness. In Australia, where the monarchy's future had long been debated, the news sparked fresh conversations about becoming a republic. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese carefully avoided direct comment, but Republican groups seized the moment to argue that even the royals themselves were walking away from the institution. Monarchist organizations countered that this was exactly why the system needed dedicated supporters to preserve it. Canadian reactions were notably more sympathetic. As a nation that prided itself on work-life balance and mental health awareness, many Canadians viewed the decision as refreshingly honest. Vancouver mother of three Jennifer Chen summed up a common sentiment. If they can't find happiness in their roles, why should they be trapped? We don't own them. The most intense reactions came from Britain itself, where the royal family was woven into the national identity. In Yorkshire pubs, heated discussions broke out between those who saw the couple as quitters and those who admired their courage. Manchester grandmother Rose Patel tearfully told reporters, "I feel like I'm losing family members. I've followed them since their wedding day." Social media became a battlefield of opinions. The hashtag "Let Them Go" trended alongside royal duty, creating parallel conversations that rarely intersected. Celebrity supporters included actors, musicians, and athletes who understood the pressure of constant public scrutiny. Critics included military veterans who spoke about duty and service, meaning something larger than personal comfort. Television talk shows dedicated entire episodes to analyzing the decision. Psychologists appeared on morning programs to discuss the mental health implications of royal life. Constitutional experts debated whether this set a dangerous precedent for future monarchs. Royal biographers found themselves suddenly in high demand, their phone ringing constantly with requests for commentary. The Vatican issued a carefully worded statement about the importance of family while respecting duty. Buddhist monks in Tibet offered prayers for the couple's peace and happiness. The global religious community seemed to understand the spiritual dimension of choosing authenticity over appearance. Fashion magazines faced an unexpected crisis. Catherine had been a major influence on global style trends, with her clothing choices creating instant sellouts worldwide. The Kate effect had been worth millions to British fashion designers and retailers. Her departure from public life left a significant gap in fashion marketing that would be difficult to fill. Royal correspondents from around the world descended on London, many of whom had built entire careers around covering this particular family. The irony wasn't lost on observers that the very media attention driving the couple away was now intensifying because of their departure decision. International. Royal families watched nervously from their own palaces. Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden privately worried whether this would inspire similar thoughts in her own children someday. The Danish royal family, known for their more relaxed approach to protocol, felt vindicated in their less formal style. Monaco's royals, who had successfully balanced glamour with privacy, found themselves studied as a potential model. Financial analysts in New York and London calculated the economic impact. The British tourism industry, worth billions annually, relied heavily on royal attractions. Wedding venues that had copied the Cambridge style worried about future bookings. Publishers who had planned royal children's books faced uncertain markets. In schools across the Commonwealth, teachers struggled to explain the situation to children who had grown up seeing William and Catherine as real-life fairy tale characters. How do you tell a 6-year-old that sometimes princes and princesses choose different endings than the storybooks suggest? The most poignant reactions came from other public figures who understood the pressure. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, who had befriended Catherine during state visits, publicly supported their choice while carefully avoiding criticism of the institution. Celebrities who had stepped away from fame for family reasons shared their own stories, creating an unexpected solidarity movement. Mental health organizations saw the decision as a powerful statement about prioritizing psychological well-being. Suicide prevention charities noted increased calls from people discussing their own struggles with expectations versus personal needs. The royal departure had inadvertently sparked a global conversation about mental health that extended far beyond palace walls. As weeks passed, the intensity of reactions began to reveal deeper truths about modern society's relationship with celebrity and duty. The couple had become unwitting symbols in larger debates about work-life balance, mental health awareness, and the right to choose one's own path. Their personal decision had become a mirror reflecting societal values and conflicts that extended far beyond the British monarchy. Whether they realized it or not, William and Catherine had started a conversation that would continue long after their departure from public life. The last royal engagement felt surreal. Catherine stood in the children's hospital ward, smiling for photographs that she knew would be among her final official images. The young patients had no idea they were witnessing history. To them, she was simply the kind lady who brought presents and listened to their stories. Their innocence provided a stark contrast to the media circus waiting outside. William completed his final military ceremony with characteristic dignity. Standing before the regiment he had served for years, he struggled to maintain composure as grown soldiers wiped away tears. These men had followed him through training exercises and ceremonial duties, and his departure felt like losing a brother in arms. The ceremony ended with a 21-gun salute that echoed across the parade ground like a farewell to an era. The couple's staff faced an uncertain future. Personal assistants, security officers, and communications specialists who had dedicated years to their service now needed to find new positions. Many had become genuine friends rather than just employees. The final staff meeting was emotional, with Catherine personally thanking each person for their loyalty and discretion. Several security officers had to step outside to collect themselves. Packing up Kensington Palace revealed the accumulation of a lifetime in public service. Rooms filled with gifts from world leaders, artwork from children across the Commonwealth, and photographs documenting thousands of public engagements. Each item told a story of duty fulfilled and connections made. Some treasures would move with them to their new life. Others would remain as part of royal collection for future generations. The children adapted with the resilience that only young people possess. Their excitement about living a normal life outweighed any sadness about leaving their royal home. They talked eagerly about attending regular schools, making friends who didn't know about their titles, and going to movies without security details. Their joy reinforced their parents' conviction that this decision was right. Final meetings with Queen Elizabeth were conducted privately, away from media attention. The monarch, despite her own feelings about duty and service, expressed pride in her grandson's courage to choose his family's well-being. She had lived long enough to understand that institutions must evolve to survive, and perhaps this decision would ultimately strengthen the monarchy by making it more relatable and human. Charles struggled with mixed emotions during their last father-son conversation. Part of him envied William's freedom to choose, remembering his own youth spent waiting to inherit responsibilities he never requested. But he also worried about the precedent being set and the increased burden falling on other family members. Their goodbye was complicated, filled with love but also unresolved tensions about duty versus personal happiness. The media countdown to their departure became increasingly intense. Photographers camped outside palace gates, hoping to capture the moment they officially became private citizens. Television news provided hourly updates about their transition, treating it like a major international event. The couple largely avoided public appearances during these final weeks, focusing on their family rather than managing their image. Legal documents were finalized, stripping away titles and privileges that had defined their adult lives. The simplicity of the paperwork contrasted with the complexity of emotions involved. Signing their names to relinquish royal status felt both liberating and terrifying. They were stepping into an unknown future. Without the safety net they had always known, international well-wishers sent thousands of letters, expressing support for their decision. A children's charity in Kenya sent handmade cards thanking Catherine for her previous visit. Veterans organizations wished William well in his future endeavors. These personal messages provided comfort during the overwhelming media attention surrounding their departure. Their final charitable commitments were completed with extra care and attention. Knowing these would be their last official acts of service, they wanted to leave lasting positive impacts. Catherine spent extra time with each family at a children's hospice, while William ensured every veteran felt heard during his final regimental visit. These moments reminded them why they had loved aspects of royal life, even as they chose to leave it behind. The night before their departure, the family had a quiet dinner together in their private dining room. No photographers, no protocol officers, no official agenda, just a family sharing a meal and discussing their hopes for the future. The children asked questions about their new life, while William and Catherine reassured them that love and family would remain constant, even as everything else changed. As they prepared for bed in their royal residence for the final time, both parents felt a mixture of sadness and anticipation. They were closing the door on a significant chapter of their lives, but opening another that promised authenticity, privacy, and the chance to define themselves on their own terms. Tomorrow would bring uncertainty, but it would also bring freedom. Dawn broke quietly over Kensington Palace as removal trucks arrived at the side entrance, away from the main gates where photographers maintained their vigil. The moving process had been planned with military precision, every detail coordinated to minimize public spectacle, while ensuring the family's possessions reached their new home safely. Catherine walked through the empty rooms one final time, her footsteps echoing in spaces that had once bustled with official activity. The nursery where her children had taken their first steps, the study where William had prepared speeches, the drawing room where they had entertained world leaders. Each space held memories that would travel with them even if the furniture did not. The children were remarkably calm, treating the morning like an adventure rather than an ending. They helped pack their favorite toys, chattering excitedly about their new house and the possibility of getting a dog, something that had been impossible in their official residence. Their resilience reminded their parents that this decision was ultimately about creating a better future for the next generation. At exactly 9 o'clock, the family emerged through the main entrance for the final time as working royals. Photographers captured every moment as they walked to their car, William carrying their youngest while Catherine held hands with the older children. They paused briefly to wave at the small crowd of supporters who had gathered to wish them well, their smiles genuine despite the emotional weight of the moment. The car journey to their new home took them through London streets lined with people who had come out to witness this historic departure. Some held signs of support, others looked on with quiet respect, a few shouted questions that went unanswered. The family traveled in relative silence, each processing their own feelings about leaving the only adult life they had known. Their destination was a countryside estate in Norfolk, far enough from London to provide privacy, but close enough to maintain some connection to their previous life. The house, while substantial, felt modest compared to palace standards. Most importantly, it offered what they had craved most, the possibility of normalcy for their children. Media helicopters circled overhead as they arrived at their new home, but strict no-fly zones had been established to prevent the kind of intrusive coverage that had driven them to this decision. The family disappeared inside quickly, beginning their first day as private citizens since their wedding. International news networks provided live coverage of the departure, with correspondents analyzing every detail from clothing choices to facial expressions. The visual of William and Catherine walking away from palace life became one of the most widely broadcast images of the year, symbolizing a seismic shift in how public figures might choose to handle fame and responsibility. Back at Kensington Palace, staff began the process of officially closing down the couple's offices. Computers were packed away, official correspondence was archived, and phone lines were disconnected. The institutional machinery that had supported their public life was quietly dismantled, marking the end of an era in royal operations. The Queen issued a final statement expressing her support for their decision and asking for privacy as they adjusted to their new circumstances. The message was brief but significant, demonstrating that the monarch herself endorsed their choice even while accepting the implications for the institution she had served for decades. Opposition. Politicians seized the moment to renew calls for discussions about the monarchy's future role. Republican groups organized rallies in major cities, arguing that the departure proved the royal system was outdated and unsustainable. Monarchist organizations countered with their own events celebrating the institution's ability to adapt and evolve. Social media exploded with speculation about the family's future plans. Would they relocate internationally? Would they write books about their experiences? Would they establish their own charitable foundation? The public appetite for information about their next chapter seemed insatiable, creating the ironic situation where their attempt to escape attention had generated even more interest. Inside their new home, the family began the process of creating routines that had nothing to do with official schedules or public appearances. Catherine cooked dinner in her own kitchen for the first time in years, while William helped the children set up their new bedrooms. These simple domestic activities felt revolutionary after years of having every moment managed by others. The first evening brought unexpected peace. No official papers to review, no events to prepare for, no speeches to practice. As darkness fell over their new home, the family sat together in their living room, watching a movie like any other family on any other evening. The ordinariness of the moment was exactly what they had hoped to achieve. Security remained present but less visible, allowing the children to play in their garden without feeling constantly observed. The sound of their laughter carried across the countryside, unmarked by the weight of protocol or public expectation. For the first time in their young lives, they could simply be children. As William and Catherine tucked their children into bed in their new home, they realized they had successfully completed the most difficult transition of their lives. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and adjustments, but tonight, they were simply a family at home, free to write their own story without the world watching their every move. 6 months after their departure, the world had largely moved on to other stories. But William and Catherine were still adjusting to their new reality. The intense media attention had gradually faded, as photographers found other subjects and news cycles shifted to fresh controversies. The privacy they had sacrificed everything to achieve was finally becoming real. Catherine stood in her kitchen garden, dirt under her fingernails for the first time in years, teaching her children how to plant vegetables. No photographers captured this moment of maternal teaching. No headlines would be written about their choice of seeds. The ordinary magic of childhood was happening without public documentation, exactly as she had hoped. William had taken on consulting work with conservation organizations, using his knowledge and connections to support environmental causes without the constraints of royal protocol. His first project involved reviewing wildlife protection programs in African nations he had visited during his royal years. The work felt meaningful because it was chosen rather than assigned. The children had adapted to local schools with surprising ease. Their classmates knew about their background but treated them with the casual acceptance that children often show toward differences. Parent-teacher conferences happened without security details, and school plays occurred without royal correspondents in attendance. The normalcy was intoxicating for parents who had never experienced it themselves. Shopping for groceries became a weekly adventure, rather than an impossibility. Catherine learned to navigate supermarket aisles, comparing prices and reading ingredient labels like any other mother. The first time she used a self-checkout machine, she laughed at her own incompetence, delighting in the mundane challenge that most people took for granted. Their relationship with extended family had evolved in unexpected ways. Some royal relatives maintained close contact, visiting their countryside home for informal dinners and children's birthday parties. Others seemed unsure how to interact now that official protocol no longer governed their encounters. The Queen remained supportive, though her visits were rare and carefully managed to avoid media attention. Financial independence brought its own challenges and rewards. For the first time in their adult lives, they managed their own budget, paid bills, and made decisions about spending without consulting palace accountants. The learning curve was steep, but empowering, giving them control over their lives in ways they had never experienced. Public interest in their private life persisted, but at more manageable levels. Occasional paparazzi photos surfaced showing them at local events or family outings, but the constant surveillance had ended. They could attend their children's sporting events, visit friends, and go to restaurants without detailed security assessments and crowd control measures. Catherine discovered talents and interests that had been suppressed during her royal years. She began painting again, something she had abandoned when every moment became scheduled and documented. William started coaching youth rugby at a local club, finding joy in mentoring young athletes without the formality that had characterized his previous sporting patronages. The couple's marriage had strengthened through the transition. Removing external pressures and expectations allowed them to rediscover each other as individuals, rather than public figures. They could disagree, laugh, and be spontaneous without considering how their behavior might be interpreted by media or constitutional experts. Their home became a sanctuary where friends and family could visit without protocol officers managing interactions. Dinner parties happened spontaneously. Conversations flowed naturally, and relationships developed organically rather than through official channels. The house filled with genuine laughter and honest conversation for the first time in years. Mental health improvements were evident to everyone around them. The constant anxiety about public perception had lifted, replaced by the normal stresses of work and family that every couple navigated. Catherine slept better, smiled more readily, and showed the relaxed confidence that had attracted William during their university years. The children flourished in ways that surprised even their parents. Free from the weight of future expectations and constant public scrutiny, they developed individual personalities and interests. One showed artistic talent, another demonstrated athletic ability, and all three displayed the kind of carefree happiness that had been their parents' ultimate goal. Looking back, both William and Catherine recognized that their royal years had taught them valuable lessons about service, dedication, and public responsibility. They didn't regret that chapter of their lives, but they had no desire to return to it. The skills they had developed, public speaking, project management, diplomatic sensitivity, served them well in their new endeavors. As their first year of private life drew to a close, the couple reflected on the courage it had taken to walk away from everything others expected them to be. The decision had been vindicated by the happiness of their children, the strength of their marriage, and their own sense of authentic purpose. They had traded a fairy tale for real life and discovered that reality was far more satisfying than performance. The world had watched them leave, and now they were content to live unwatched. Their story had become one of ordinary people choosing extraordinary courage to prioritize love over obligation, authenticity over expectation, and family happiness over public approval. In stepping away from their royal roles, they had finally become exactly who they were meant to be,